You walk into a room and instantly feel something is off.
No one says a word, no one does anything wrong, but your chest tightens as if your body knows something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. Later, it turns out someone was lying, or plotting, or breaking inside.
And you weren't surprised. Because you already knew. You always do. Maybe you dream things before they happen.
Maybe you can sense when someone is in emotional pain, even behind a perfectly crafted smile. Maybe people call you intense, overly sensitive, or strange.
You've learned to smile and stay silent, because how do you explain the unexplainable?
How do you tell someone that their breakup, their burnout, their betrayal, echoed in your soul before it ever reached theirs? If any of this sounds familiar, you may be what Carl Jung once called the most psychologically dangerous personality type to be born with.
Not dangerous to others. Dangerous to yourself. Jung didn't say this lightly.
He devoted decades of clinical work to understanding people who live with a heightened form of awareness, a kind of internal antenna tuned not just to the outer world, but to what lies beneath it.
He called them intuitive introverts.
People whose minds operate like deep-sea radar, constantly scanning below the surface of ordinary life and pulling up fragments from the unconscious symbols, patterns, hidden motives, future possibilities.
At first, this sounds like a gift. And it is.
But it comes with a cost.
You don't just see reality. You see through it. You don't just hear what people say. You feel the weight of what they're not saying. You don't just observe life as it happens, you sense the undercurrents before the waves crash. And this, Jung warned, creates an almost unbearable psychological tension. Because you're no longer living in just one world. You're straddling two, the tangible and the symbolic, the visible and the invisible, the present moment and the eternal now. Most people live in a single stream of reality.
They rely on what they can see, touch, measure, explain. But you're forced to navigate both the physical and the psychic, both the conscious and the archetypal. And this split reality can become a prison if you don't learn how to manage it.
That's the hidden curse Jung pointed to. It's not just the weight of seeing more. It's the loneliness of being the only one who does. In this episode, we're going far beyond personality quizzes and shallow typologies. We're diving into the real, clinical psychology behind intuitive introversion through the lens of Carl Jung's darkest and most profound discoveries. Because he didn't just observe the gift.
He also studied the cost, the psychological breakdowns, the spiritual crises, the quiet suffering that so often hides behind the eyes of highly perceptive people. And here's the truth most self-help gurus won't tell you: your intuition won't save you, not if it's consuming you from within.
Over the next 5 parts, we'll take a journey.
First, we'll explore the gift, the moment you begin to realize that your mind works differently, and the intoxicating thrill of seeing what others miss. Then, we'll enter the shadow side of the curse, when your gift starts to isolate you, overwhelm you, and turn your insight into instability. Then comes the turning point, the integration, where you learn to turn your sensitivity into strength. And finally, we'll explore how integrated intuitive introverts become bridges between worlds, powerful healers, teachers, and creators, but only if they survive the journey inward. So if you've ever felt too sensitive for this world, too deep for shallow conversations, or too aware to sleep peacefully through life, stay with me.
Because this isn't just your pain. It might be your calling. It usually starts in childhood. You notice things other kids don't.
You sense when your parents are fighting, even if they smile and pretend everything's fine.
You feel a classmate's sadness before they say a word.
You can predict outcomes, who will get in trouble, who will leave, what will fall apart, with an eerie kind of precision.
And the strangest part? No one taught you how to do it.
It's just there.
You see through people. You sense dynamics. You get feelings about things, and they're almost always right.
Carl Jung called this function introverted intuition.
It's not imagination. It's not guessing.
It's a deeply unconscious, highly developed perceptive function that allows certain individuals to see not only what is, but what will be. And while everyone has access to intuition in small moments, for a rare few intuitive introverts, this mode of perception is dominant.
It's how they process the world by default. These are the people who ask different questions. While others ask, "What happened?" They ask, "What does this mean?" While others observe facts, they trace the invisible causes behind those facts. While most live in the present moment, intuitive introverts live 3 steps ahead, mapping archetypal patterns and unseen movements like a psychic chessboard. In Jung's own words, introverted intuition is perception via the unconscious. You're not just looking at external objects. You're perceiving internal realities, psychological patterns, emotional structures, invisible motives. Things most people don't even realize exist. Imagine that your primary way of interacting with reality is through a function other people barely acknowledge. It's like being born with an extra sense, but no one else can see it, explain it, or validate it. That's the beginning of the gift. And at first, it feels magical. You begin to notice how easy it is to read people. You can walk into a room and feel the emotional weather. You know who's holding the real power even if someone else has the title. You sense which relationships are real, which are breaking, which are built on illusion. You meet someone new, and without knowing why, you just know whether you can trust them. People are shocked by your insights. They call you wise beyond your years, old soul, uncannily accurate. You smile and shrug it off, but inside, a part of you feels chosen. You begin to rely on this ability. Not because it makes you feel special, but because it works. Again and again, your instincts prove true. You predict outcomes no one else sees coming. You offer advice that cuts deeper than logic. You understand people better than they understand themselves. But Jung noticed something subtle and dangerous about people in this early stage. He observed that many intuitive introverts, dazzled by their inner world, begin to slowly devalue the outer one. The tangible world of facts and sensations feels flat compared to the rich, symbolic depth of what's happening below the surface. The world of intuition is intoxicating, and for many, it becomes a kind of hidden sanctuary. A place where everything makes sense. A place of power. Why bother with ordinary conversations when you can sense someone's trauma in their tone of voice? Why pay attention to routine tasks when your mind is chasing meaning through dreams and synchronicities? This is where the cracks begin to form. Because while the intuitive mind is diving deeper and deeper into unconscious perception, the function of sensation, your connection to the here and now, begins to atrophy. Jung called this the aloofness from tangible reality. You stop being fully present in your body. You start living mostly in your head, in visions, ideas, possibilities. You become increasingly sensitive, but also increasingly disconnected. And then it begins, the subtle breakdown of relationships. Your friends feel like you see too much. You notice the tiny lies they tell themselves and them. You speak truths too soon, too deeply. They get uncomfortable. They pull away. Family members accuse you of being too intense, too analytical, too much. Romantic relationships become complicated. Your partner feels exposed, unable to hide their emotional truths from you. That much vulnerability feels unsafe to them. So they create distance or leave. You begin to learn your first survival skill, silence. You nod, smile, listen. You pretend you didn't already know what they were about to say. You hide the full depth of what you're perceiving. You stop offering insight unless explicitly asked. You begin living 2 lives, the outer one, where you blend in, and the inner one, where you are constantly decoding the deeper reality no one else seems to notice. Jung called this the great disadvantage of the intuitive introvert. They rarely talk about what they perceive. Not because they can't, but because they've learned that sharing it only creates distance. The more accurate the insight, the more threatening it feels to others. So they carry it alone. But here's the paradox, as you go silent, your perception sharpens even more. It becomes honed through solitude. You get better at sensing patterns. Better at predicting outcomes. Better at knowing. Yet the price is loneliness. You begin to feel like you're living between worlds. One foot in the ordinary, the other in the archetypal. One face for the surface world, one hidden in the depths. And while your gift continues to grow, so does the burden. This is the hidden shadow of stage 1. It looks like insight. It feels like magic.
But it whispers a question that only grows louder with time.
If I can see this much, why do I feel so alone?
That question is the doorway to stage 2, the curse.
And that's where we're headed next. You thought the hardest part would be understanding others.
But it turns out, the hardest part is being understood. By the time you reach stage 2, you've learned to keep your perceptions private. You've mastered the art of nodding politely while someone explains something you already sensed weeks ago.
You listen to surface conversations while tracking the unconscious motives underneath.
You show up, smile, function, but inside, you're drowning in signals no one else can see.
This is where the gift begins to turn on you. Because what no one tells you about having extraordinary perception is that perception doesn't come with an off switch. The visions don't stop. The insights don't pause. You can't just unsee what you've seen about people, situations, even yourself. And the more sensitive your perception becomes, the heavier the psychological toll. Carl Jung studied this stage deeply. He warned that while intuitive introverts may begin life feeling gifted, they often reach a threshold where that gift becomes a burden. And if not handled properly, it can become a kind of internal collapse. A slow unraveling. A silent erosion of the self. Let's break it down.
Most people live in one world, the material, observable, tangible world.
But intuitive introverts? They live in two. There's the world everyone else sees. And then there's the world you see, the symbolic realm beneath the surface. The shadow world of unspoken motives, archetypal roles, emotional patterns, future possibilities. And you're forced to constantly translate between them. It's like living in a house with 2 stories, but the staircase between them is creaky, steep, and always shifting. You begin to question what's real. Is it the conversation happening in front of you? Or the deeper truth you feel underneath it? Is it the facts on paper? Or the instinct in your gut that knows something's wrong? You start to second guess your reality. You wonder if you're just making it all up. That's when the real danger begins. Jung identified 3 specific psychological traps that often appear in this phase. Each one is seductive. Each one feels like a relief at first. But if left unchecked, they'll pull you deeper into isolation, distortion, and eventually, collapse. Let's explore them one by one. Trap 1: Archetypal inflation.
This is the moment you stop observing archetypes and start identifying with them.
As an intuitive introvert, you see the deeper patterns of human behavior: the hero, the victim, the sage, the destroyer. You see who's playing what role, and sometimes, you even see the archetypes activating in yourself. But here's where things get slippery. Your ego begins to attach itself to those roles. You start believing you are the wise one, the healer, the visionary. You tell yourself, I see more than others, therefore, I must be more evolved than them. You start to feel chosen, not in awe, but in superiority. This is what Jung called archetypal possession. You lose sight of your human self. Your ego inflates with the power of the unconscious content you're perceiving. And suddenly, you're no longer a humble observer of meaning, you're the vessel of sacred truth. The prophet. The one who knows. And here's the insidious part: your insights might still be accurate. You really do see things others can't. But now, those insights are filtered through an ego that believes it's above everyone else. Which means you stop learning. You stop listening. You stop being human. Inflation is the first warning sign. It feels like confidence. But it's really a mask for loneliness and pain. Trap 2: Psychic contamination. This one's less glamorous and far more devastating. Because your mind is so permeable to unconscious content, you don't just sense other people's emotions, you absorb them. Their depression becomes your heaviness. Their anxiety takes root in your stomach. Their unspoken rage pulses through your body as if it were yours. You become what Jung called a psychic sponge, soaking up the emotional atmosphere of every room you walk into. And worse, you don't even realize it's happening.
You start believing those emotions are yours.
You feel overwhelmed, exhausted, burnt out, and you don't know why. Over time, you begin to lose your sense of identity. You don't know where you end and they begin.
You take on the burdens of others, convinced it's your job to help, heal, fix, absorb.
You become addicted to being needed, because being needed feels like the only justification for your sensitivity. But it costs you everything. Your energy. Your clarity. Your sense of self.
You become a ghost in your own life, drifting between the emotional worlds of others with no anchor of your own.
Trap 3: Symbolic Reality Collapse. This is the most dangerous trap and the hardest to escape.
By now, you've lived in the world of symbols, meanings, and archetypes for so long that it becomes more compelling than physical reality.
You lose your grip on the concrete. You start interpreting everything as a sign, a message, a pattern. Coincidences become prophecies. Dreams feel more real than waking life.
You begin living in what Jung called magical thinking, where every experience is filtered through layers of unconscious interpretation. And while this can feel spiritually profound at first, it often leads to a complete breakdown of practical functioning.
You forget to pay bills. You avoid real conversations. You isolate yourself in inner narratives.
You become consumed by meaning, but disconnected from life.
This is the stage Jung referred to as possession by the unconscious. When the very insights that once gave you clarity now plunge you into confusion. You can't tell what's real anymore.
And worse, you begin to doubt yourself entirely.
You wonder if you're just broken.
If maybe you were never intuitive at all, just unstable. But you're not broken.
You're caught between two worlds without a map.
And that map, the one that leads out of the curse and into clarity, begins in stage 3, integration.
That's where we're going next.
But before we do, pause for a moment.
Ask yourself. Have you ever felt inflated by your insight, even a little? Have you ever absorbed someone's emotions so deeply you forgot what was yours? Have you ever lived inside a symbolic story so long that the real world felt distant? If the answer is yes, then you're not alone. You're just standing at the crossroads. And the next step could save your mind.
By now, you've seen both sides of the gift. You've felt the power of your perception, the precision of your insights, the uncanny timing of your inner knowing. But you've also felt the cost.
The silence. The alienation. The blurred boundaries between your mind and everyone else's. The creeping doubt about what's real and what's not. This is where most intuitive introverts get stuck. They either suppress their gift, numbing out, disconnecting, pretending to be normal.
Or they get lost in it, overwhelmed, disoriented, drifting further from practical life with every inner vision. But Carl Jung believed in a third path, a narrow and difficult one.
A path that leads through the middle, not away from the unconscious, but into it, with awareness, skill, and responsibility.
He called this stage integration.
It's not about fixing your sensitivity.
It's about learning to carry it without letting it crush you.
It's not about becoming less intuitive.
It's about becoming strong enough to hold what you perceive without being consumed by it.
This stage is where the real work begins. And it starts with one crucial realization. Your gift needs a container.
Jung believed that for intuitive introverts to thrive, they must develop their opposite function, sensation.
Because intuition, when left unbalanced, becomes chaos.
But when grounded in the physical, present moment, it becomes vision.
Clarity. Creative force. So how do you do that? Let's walk through the 3 psychological skills Jung believed were essential for transformation. Skill 1: Strengthen sensation anchor into the physical world. Intuitive introverts often live in their heads, or more accurately, in the deep waters beneath their thoughts. But the body is your anchor. The present moment is your lifeline. You don't need to stop being intuitive. You just need to balance it with practices that pull you back into the tangible world.
This is called developing a conscious relationship with your inferior function. It might sound abstract, but it's very simple in practice. Walk slowly and feel your feet hit the ground. Cook a meal, paying attention to smell, taste, texture. Touch earth, garden, clean, lift, build.
Move your body, dance, stretch, sweat.
What matters is not what you do, but how present you are while doing it.
These aren't distractions.
They're stabilizers. Sensation practices give your intuition a container to operate inside, like building a dam around a wild river so its power becomes energy, not destruction. This is what Jung called the marriage of opposites.
Your intuition is the content. Sensation is the structure. Together, they become wisdom. Skill 2. Translate the invisible, give form to the formless. Many intuitive introverts suffer because their inner world has no outlet. Insights build. Symbols pile up. Visions repeat.
But there's nowhere for them to go.
And over time, this creates pressure. Psychological weight. That's why integration requires expression.
You must learn to take what you perceive and bring it into the world in a form others can engage with.
This might be art, painting what you see, even if it's abstract or strange.
Writing, journaling your perceptions, or turning them into stories, essays, reflections. Teaching, explaining complex internal patterns in a way others can understand. Design, movement, music, conversation, any mode that allows your inner world to reach the outer one. This is what Jung did with his own visions.
He didn't just experience the unconscious, he gave it shape.
He created frameworks like the collective unconscious, the shadow, individuation.
These weren't ideas.
They were translations of his lived experience.
And this is the gift of translation.
It helps you make sense of what you see, and it helps others benefit from it, too.
When you express your perceptions clearly, they become usable, digestible, grounded,
and you relieve the pressure building inside you.
Because your inner world doesn't want to be a prison. It wants to be spoken. Skill 3. Build boundaries, stay open without losing yourself. This is the most challenging skill. And the most important.
As an intuitive introvert, your mind is open by default.
You pick up on people's emotions, unconscious drives, psychic energies.
But being open to the unconscious without boundaries is like leaving every door in your house unlocked during a storm.
You're not just letting in insight. You're letting in chaos.
That's why Jung emphasized the development of conscious permeability, the ability to choose when to open, when to close, and how to protect your inner space.
You must learn to recognize the difference between intuition versus projection, inner knowing versus anxiety, empathy versus enmeshment, wisdom versus inflation. This is called discrimination.
Not in the judgmental sense, but in the psychic sense, sorting through the noise to find the signal. Knowing when what you're perceiving is true and when it's a reflection of your own wounds, needs, or fears. Practical boundary tools include visualization. Imagine a protective field around your energy before entering intense situations. Cleansing rituals, take walks, showers, or meditative pauses to release absorbed energy.
Mental sorting, ask is this mine, before reacting emotionally. If not, release it. Selective sharing, learn who can handle your insights and who cannot. Most importantly, reclaim your standpoint.
Jung said that to engage the unconscious without being devoured by it, one must develop a stable psychic position.
That means, you know who you are. You hold your center. You can perceive, serve, translate, without collapsing into the content you're receiving.
That's the core of integration.
You no longer live in between two worlds, half lost.
You become the bridge between them. In this stage, your sensitivity becomes precision.
Your insight becomes service.
Your burden becomes your purpose.
But there's one more stage. One final transformation.
When you learn to live from this integrated place, not just occasionally, but fully, something remarkable happens.
You stop feeling like an outsider in your own life.
You begin to meet others who speak your language. You start to belong not by hiding your depth, but by honoring it. By the time you reach this stage, something has shifted. You're no longer fighting your sensitivity. You're no longer drowning in it. You're learning to use it not as a shield, not as a burden, but as a channel. A tool. A responsibility. This is the moment when the curse becomes the calling. Because once you've integrated your inner world, once you've learned to stabilize, express, and protect your intuition, something new becomes possible. You become a bridge between realms. Jung believed that those who walk the path of deep psychological integration, especially intuitive introverts, have the power to influence collective consciousness. Not through charisma or status, but through depth, clarity, and quiet resonance with truth. Think about it. Who are the voices that changed your life? Chances are, it wasn't the loudest person in the room. It was someone who said something simple, but piercing. Someone who spoke from a place of stillness. Someone who had touched something real, and came back from that place with a message. That's what intuitive introverts are here to do. Not to impress. Not to dominate. But to translate the invisible and make it useful. Let's be honest, the world isn't built for people like you. It celebrates productivity, speed, surface-level charm. It rewards certainty, not sensitivity. It trains people to numb out, not tune in. And yet, that same world is starving for meaning. For truth. For healing. We are facing collective crises, not just ecological or economic, but spiritual. People are waking up to the realization that something is missing. That life feels mechanical. Empty. Lost in noise. That's where you come in. You've walked through the inner wilderness. You faced the loneliness, the psychic flooding, the shadow. And now, you hold a map. Not a theoretical one, a lived one. You know what it means to wrestle with the unconscious and return with clarity. This is your value. But only if you stay integrated. The world doesn't need more overwhelmed mystics or inflated prophets. It doesn't need another person posting vague spiritual content with no grounding in reality. It needs you in your wholeness. Still sensitive, but also structured. Still intuitive, but also embodied. Still deep, but able to communicate clearly. That's the rarest combination of all. When you're unintegrated, your gift makes you feel alone. But once you integrate, it becomes your invitation to connection. Because here's the truth, you're not the only one. There are others like you, intuitive introverts scattered around the world. People who've also felt like misfits, also wrestled with inner visions, also learned to survive silence. And when integrated intuitive introverts find each other, something beautiful happens. You begin to speak a shared language, one of depth, archetype, clarity, and compassion. You stop trying to fit in and start aligning. You don't need a huge audience. You don't need to be famous or influential. All you need is a few people who get it and who need what you've learned. That might be one friend, one client, one reader, one listener. But the ripple effect is real. Every time you use your gift in service, to create, to comfort, to clarify, you shift the world ever so slightly toward consciousness, toward truth, toward healing. And the beautiful part? You don't have to force it. You just have to show up whole. It's not flashy. It's not perfect. It's not even always comfortable. But it is real. You live with awareness. You notice things others miss, but now, you don't let it isolate you. You hold boundaries. You trust your perceptions, but verify them. You speak truth gently, clearly, without the need to be believed. You create space. For yourself. For others. For the unconscious to move through you, but not take over. You become someone people feel safe with, even if they don't know why. You offer insights that clarify, not confuse.
You stop trying to be the answer and instead become the question that opens new doors. You don't carry the weight of the world. You carry your part of it with strength, with compassion, and with rest. And perhaps most importantly, you stop apologizing for being who you are. You stop hiding your intensity. You stop shrinking your insight. You stop dulling your sensitivity to make others more comfortable. Because now, you know how to handle it. Now, you understand the difference between being overwhelmed by your gift and being of service through it. That's what the bridge does. It doesn't choose one world over the other. It holds both. In the final part of this journey, we'll bring everything full circle. We'll talk about what it really means to live this way, not just in theory, but in practice. How to walk through the world with your full intuitive power intact, while still staying connected, nourished, and sane. Because once the bridge is built, you have to walk it every day. You've walked through the depths. You've uncovered the hidden gift. You've faced the shadow. You've survived the curse. You've learned the tools of integration. And now, you're standing in the space between two worlds, no longer lost, no longer hiding, but awake. The question now is simple but life-changing. Will you carry this gift deliberately? Because here's the truth that Jung never sugarcoated: being an intuitive introvert isn't just a psychological trait. It's a responsibility. To yourself. To your sanity. And to the world around you. You weren't made to blend in. You weren't built for surface living. Your mind reaches too far, too deep, to be satisfied by shallow comforts. And yet, your sensitivity, your intensity, will always make you feel like an outsider unless you learn how to carry it as a gift rather than a weight. This is the final stage of the journey. Not a finish line, but a beginning. A new way of living where you no longer deny what you are. You no longer fear it. You no longer suffer under it. Instead, you honor it. Build a life that can hold your depth. Most people build their lives based on convenience, familiarity, or social expectations. But when you see the world the way you do, you can't afford to live on autopilot. You need structures that nourish your sensitivity. That might mean creating daily solitude not as escape, but as communion. Curating relationships that respect depth over distraction. Choosing work that aligns with your inner values, not just external validation. Designing a home, a rhythm, a spiritual practice that anchors you. This isn't luxury. This is survival, spiritual and psychological. If your outer life can't hold your inner complexity, you will begin to collapse under the weight of what you know. Jung called this making the unconscious conscious. And it doesn't happen by thinking harder. It happens by living differently, from the inside out. Release the need to be understood by everyone. One of the most painful parts of this path is the chronic feeling of being misunderstood. You say one thing, people hear another. You try to explain what you perceive, they look at you like you're speaking another language. And maybe you are. But part of transforming the gift is realizing this. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You only need to be true to what you know, and open to those who recognize it. Stop wasting energy trying to convince others of your truth. Instead, use that energy to embody it. When you live in alignment with your deepest perceptions, you attract people who feel you even if they can't fully explain why. And those people? They're your real tribe. Even if there are only a few. Turn your sensitivity into service. Your perception is no longer about you. It's no longer about proving anything, or hiding from anything. Now, it becomes a tool not just for survival, but for service. You see patterns others don't. You sense suffering before it's spoken. You can name what others only feel. That's sacred. But sacredness doesn't mean performance. It means presence. It means showing up in ordinary moments with extraordinary awareness and offering that awareness gently, responsibly, wisely. Sometimes that means listening deeper. Sometimes it means offering a quiet insight. Sometimes it means walking away when the room is too full of noise. Your gift doesn't need a stage. It needs a center. And you are the one who builds it.
Keep walking even when the road disappears. This path is never finished.
There will be days when you feel overwhelmed again. Days when your insights isolate you. Days when you feel like you're slipping back into stage 2. That's okay. Integration isn't a straight line. It's a spiral. You circle back, but at a higher level each time. Each cycle teaches you something new. More about how to care for your energy. More about who you truly are beneath the patterns. More about how to live with your intuition instead of under it.
This is the lifelong path of individuation, the soul's journey toward wholeness.
And you are already walking it. Not because it's easy, but because it's yours. You are not a flaw, you are a frequency. Let's be clear. Your ability to sense deeply is not a flaw to be fixed. Your need for solitude is not a problem to be solved. Your intuitive intelligence is not a burden to be ashamed of. It is a frequency, a different wavelength than most people are tuned to. But that doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're rare. And rare doesn't mean better, it means responsible. Because the world is loud, disconnected, fragmented. But you carry depth. You carry meaning. You carry reminders of what lies beneath the noise. We need that. But only if you give it to us with your feet on the ground and your heart still intact. Only if you choose to live this gift with wisdom. So let me ask you, where are you in this journey? Are you still discovering your gift, uncertain but curious? Are you deep in the curse, overwhelmed, isolated, trying to stay afloat? Or are you beginning to integrate, learning to live with balance, with clarity, with purpose? Wherever you are, know this. You are not alone. Not anymore. There are others walking this path. Others who understand. Others who need your story, your insight, your survival. So if this episode spoke to you, share it. And in the comments, tell us. What's the most accurate intuitive insight you've ever had? What stage are you in right now? What's the hardest part of living with this kind of perception? Your story might be the very map someone else is searching for. And if you're ready to go even deeper, our next episode will explore the powerful shadow work practices Jung developed specifically for highly sensitive individuals and how to use them to keep your soul intact in a world that doesn't always make space for it. Until then, protect your sensitivity. Honor your perceptions. And remember, the world needs what you can see. But only if you learn to see it without losing yourself in the process.